This morning, we're going to take a trip back in a little different direction, and we are honored to have with us a retired aerospace executive who I've known for many years in different roles, but going back to a vice presidency with the Boeing company, and has been very generous with his time. And you know, one of the things that we are always looking for in our business is that executive that can show us the leadership to make earned value work the way that it ought to work, the one who can overcome all of the squabbles about how much EVM data can dance on the head of a pin, and use this kind of information for managing programs in different contexts. And so I'm very pleased to welcome this morning Mr. Patrick Finneran, who will share his experience with us. Pat?
Yeah, it was just a little bit more than 48 hours ago. I was in the Dutch West Indies off a little island called Saba, which is about an hour from nowhere. But it's the 5th ranked dive site in the world. And my wife and I were diving. Beautiful place. Untouched coral, lots of creatures. And we're 70 feet below the water, having a great time. But in the back of the mind all the time is risk management. Because you see, we also saw more sharks of the large variety. That's the only thing I know about sharks is large and small. I can't tell you anything else. All of them scare me, especially the one that tried to circle back behind us. That one scared me the most. Moray eels, barracuda about as long as I am tall. And so I started thinking about the difference between measurement and management. Because 70 feet below the water, you certainly want to know what your air supply is, what your depth is, particularly if you're only certified to go to a certain depth, and how long you've been down there. Then I realized that measurement in that environment is woefully inadequate. You really need to manage that air supply so that you have enough to get to the top with your 3-minute safety stop. You need to manage that depth so you don't exceed the depth that allows you to have a no-stop limit to get to the top in case something goes wrong. You've got to manage the dive itself and the other divers. And then I thought, well, you know, this is kind of like the talk I'm going to do here in a couple of days. Because a lot of people think EVM is a measurement tool. Now, this may not be totally true anymore. I'm slightly out of date. But there was a time when people thought EVM was a measurement tool. I never did. I thought it was a management concept that provided the data that you needed in order to have a fully integrated performance management system operating. So once again, just like in diving, measurement is not enough. Now, of course, I'm preaching to the choir. Everybody here is here because you believe in EVM. Where are the people who don't? We need to expand the audience. I look at who's here, and you know, where are I know Boeing's here. I'm a little partial there. But where are the user companies? Are they represented as much as they should be? And not just the Boeings and Lockheeds and Northrops, but the Lord corporations and the Smiths Industries and whoever else. I think they got bought by somebody. But where are these other companies? Because they should be experiencing this whole process. Because they're the ones that are going to have to take what you do and do well and figure out how to manage with it. So we all believe, and I think I can safely say this, we all believe that earned value management is a very effective measurement tool and a very effective management concept. But that causes me to scratch my head and ask a question. Why then do we have so many government programs, and probably industry programs as well, that are underperforming? They're behind schedule, they're over cost. I'm not as tuned in as I once was, but I still read the early bird, still read all the news I can about what's going on in this business. And I haven't heard anybody tout on cost on schedule in a long time. So if what we do is so good, why is performance so bad? And I want to talk about that. If what we do is so good, why aren't companies using it on their own when it's not required by a government contract? We did, and I'll talk about that. Do government agencies and companies have a shared view about EVM? That's a real question, because I will tell you, when I was doing this for a living all the time, they did not. There were times when EVM was used as a punitive measurement tool by the government. In the height of our success on F-18 E&F development and test, we failed the government's EVM audit. I just looked at him and went, really? We'll work on it. We've got to get everybody on the same sheet of music. We know EVM is a game changer when it's properly employed, and it's part of an integrated performance management process. Cannot use EVM alone. It's got to be integrated into your overall performance management process, where you're looking at cost, schedule, quality, technical performance, supplier performance, risk management. All those things have to be done in an integrated fashion, and they've got to be done at every level of your program. So what does it take to unleash the power of EVM? Pat's opinion. First of all, government and industry need a shared vision for the program. What is the desired outcome? What's the shared vision? They need a contract that supports that vision. How many times have we experienced this adverse contracting, where the government is trying so hard to squeeze every penny out of the contract, and the contractor doesn't want to lose the contract, or, they cave and they accept a contract that probably is too tight. And what happens? We have overruns and reprogramming and restructuring and all those other ugly things. When if we would have just written the contract around the vision, we would have avoided all those costs. So the pennies they may have saved in this adverse contracting environment cost billions. We've got to get to the point where if we're going to have a vision, F-35, F-18 E&F, next generation trainer, I don't care what it is, put a contract on it that matches the vision. Fund the contract, full and stable funding. How many of you in your dealings with your customers have heard the angst about unstable funding? You got to have a show of hands on that one. Third of the room, I'm surprised it's that few. Your organization's got to be aligned with your work breakdown structure. You've got to have a true integrated master plan and an integrated master schedule that's truly integrated, that's linked, so that when you change one part of the schedule, the rest of the schedule changes, and you're not getting out of sync. You need an experienced, qualified team, especially the program manager and the chief engineer on both the government and the industry side. If the program managers aren't in sync and the chief engineers aren't in sync, nothing's going to work right. Nothing. My program manager, by the way, from the F-18 days of, 1997 to 2000, is coming to my house for dinner Saturday night. That's the relationship we had. We're close friends and stayed close friends ever since. And that doesn't mean I got any breaks or he got any breaks, but we had this relationship of open, honest communication that allowed us to support one another. You need a good stable baseline, and you need to have baseline control, which means you need to have good configuration control and a good change board. And finally, transparency. There cannot be any of this, I'm not letting you see this. Cannot be. We've got to have transparency, and you get that through shared data. Every Monday, we would have this wonderful program management meeting, 108 people in a big room in Building 270, McDonnell Douglas. And we would go through every phase of both the legacy F-18 and where we were on E&F development. Every Monday morning. They also re-examined the program management paradigm. McDonnell Douglas at that time, of the time of the A-12, was a highly functional organization. Program managers were not really business leaders, they were coordinators. That didn't work. So we changed the way we did program management. John Capiloupo came in and became the president. He said, we're going to do things different. We had clear responsibility, authority, and accountability between program managers and functions. Program managers had the lead and had contract execution responsibility. Functions were in support. Pat's opinion, that's the only way you can maximize the effectiveness of EVM. We had an integrated test team with the government, both for DT and OT. And Wayne was just telling me the other day that Deja Vu, his son, who's working the operational test squadron at Eglin, is looking at doing the same thing now. It is the best way to build confidence with your customer you can have, because there's no guessing about what's going on, and everybody, government pilots, our pilots, all the technicians, all the engineers, all motivated to do the same thing. One plan, one set of data. We talked about the Monday afternoon phone call, one set of data. We all looked at the same data all the time. Requirements flow down. How often we screw that up. If you don't have good requirements flow down along the WBS, then I don't care what kind of EVM system you put on it, it's going to have gaps. You've got to understand not only your written requirements, but your implied requirements that come out of that contract. So there's specified requirements and there are implied requirements. You've got to address them all in your requirements flow down. IPT's got to be aligned with the WBS. Obviously, you've got to have earned value at every level. And we did it on a weekly basis. Later, we did it daily. And I kid you not, we did it daily. But we start off on a weekly basis. In that management meeting I talked about, every IPT team leader would come in, and he or she, with their Northrop counterpart or their government counterpart, if they existed, and they would stand up in front of 108 people in the room who were all the people that could help them, and they would talk about their cost and schedule based on EVM data, quality, their technical performance, which could be weight, could be aero performance, it could be whatever the technical performance was, their supplier's performance, and their supplier could be an external supplier or an internal supplier, their supplier's performance, risk mitigation, risks and risk mitigation. Every IPT. It was about a 4-hour meeting, but it was worth every hour we spent. It was this structure that was key to a successful development and operational test. We had great visibility clear communication. Everybody knew what was going on, and everybody could react quickly to changing situations. I don't remember the date. Maybe I have a mental blank on the date. But we knew we had an aerodynamic problem with some instability on the airplane. It wasn't until we got through the loads portion of the flight test and got into the aero performance that we found out we had a hell of a problem. At high G, high Q, high alpha dot, see, I know technical terms you guys don't know. The airplane would roll on its own without a command, abruptly. And that's really not good because it's the heart of the fighter envelope, and it also scares the crap out of test pilots. So I obviously, my government program manager knew because his pilots were right there with my pilots. So we write a note to John Lockard, who was head of NavAir, one of the finest leaders NavAir ever had. And we say, this needs to stay quiet because we think we can fix this. We just don't know what the fix is quite yet, but we're going to fix it. And he took that note and he hand carried it to the Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Research, Development, and Acquisition. And the next morning, I walk into the office and my secretary, with tears in her eyes, hands me the Washington Post. And above the fold on the Washington Post is a picture of the F-18 with bold headlines that say, "Incorrectable flaw in wing design will cause program cancellation." Swear to God. I'm the program manager. This is my problem. So I call my boss, this guy named Mike Sears, who's probably the best program manager I ever worked with, and said, I read it. What are you going to do? I said, I'll tell you in a couple days. He said, how about this afternoon? I said, you haven't changed. Well, fortunately, because of earned value management, which we had on all aspects of the program, including the flight test, we knew where we were. And we knew that we had some flight test points that were so solid we didn't need to test them anymore, even though we had some test flights planned for that. So we could borrow those. We knew what our EAC and BAC reserve was, both on cost and schedule. And so we took a look at that and how we could incorporate that and use that reserve to do the unplanned test flights to fix wing drop without disrupting the rest of flight test. And we continued normal flight tests with the exception of that one area. So we didn't just stop and wait to fix wing drop. We did those things in parallel. And the bottom line is we finished developmental tests, operational tests, all the evaluations out at China Lake on cost, on original cost, and original schedule. And as a result, our team was awarded the Collier Trophy for 1999. That's the power of earned value management. You know where you are. The second one, ECP 6038, we realized that metal forward fuselage was going to give us maintenance problems because of all the detail parts. It's metal, it's a Navy airplane, more corrosion, all those kind of things, and it took up space. All these detail parts just take up space. They're things that keep the metal from crushing under pressure. And we could do a composite wound forward fuselage, we knew that. So we went to the Navy and we said, we believe we can do this, and we can do it in flow, and we can incorporate it on ship set 67 in full rate production. The Navy said, great idea. We don't have any money. So I went to Boeing. I said, I need a little money because I think it's in our mutual best interest to fix this because we can add growth capability and add future potential for the airplane. They said, how much you want? I said, 130 million. Well, that's not a lot today, you know. That's round off change today, but in 1997, that was a lot of money. And they said, how are you going to get it back? And I said, well, the Navy said, if we can get this thing, this new fuselage, through all of the required testing, and if it'll fit on the airplane properly and not screw up any of the aerodynamics, and if we can cut it in at shipset 67, they'll let us recoup our cost. Of course, you can't pick up any cost of money, you lose that. But they'll let us recoup our cost over a set number of airplanes going forward. So what do? We created a team dedicated to doing this, but we required that team to use the same integrated performance management process that we used on development and test. Absolutely the same rigor. So instead of a $10 billion program, we're talking a $130 million program, but it was a critical $130 million program. And that's all the money there was. Long story short, we delivered Super Hornet 67, 30 days ahead of contract schedule with a composite forward fuselage, and every Hornet since then has had that same fuselage. So leveraging what we learned on those two programs, when we went into low rate initial production and full rate production, we kept the same process because there were some people who thought EVM was just for development. Anybody remember that? Yeah, that was the original EVM, that's development stuff. We said, no, it's working. If it's working, we're going to do it. So we kept the same rigor, put it on our production program, gradually moved on the shop floor, just on the shop floor, to daily earned value, 8-hour work packages on the shop floor. So I could see data that was 24 hours old every other day on where the airplanes were. Now with that kind of visibility, when you start having a problem, you can react to it much quicker. You remember the old days of trend analysis? It takes 6 data points before you can call it a trend. I'm too much of a coward for that. 3 was plenty for me. So weekly earned value was pretty good. Within 3 weeks, we knew we had a trend. We had to do something to change that if it was a bad trend. When I found out I could change it every other day, I could find out, oh God. And there are people, Mark Bear's here someplace, I think most people like me, but there were times I don't think they liked me a lot because of the things I asked them to do. But the bottom line was, because of this, in an unprecedented move, the Navy and the U.S. Congress awarded a multi-year on the first airplane on full rate production. 5-year multi-year with only LRIP behind us. Never been done before, never been done since. Damn good thing we did it, because guess what happened to those first airplanes? We stood up the FRS, Fleet Replacement Squadron, and 3 operational squadrons. All 3 of those operation squadrons made early deployments with our help, because it was still contractor logistics support. Made early deployments, and they made those deployments into combat for Operation Iraqi Freedom. And they performed incredibly well, to include one of the first strafing runs done by a Navy airplane since World War II, F-18 ENF. So that leaves us with the KC-135 MRO. I moved moved on in my career and became the president of Boeing Services, Boeing Defense Services. And I get my in brief. Anybody know what a reach forward loss is? Anybody? Ever heard of a reach forward loss? What that means is the finance people have already decided this is such a disaster. It cannot be fixed. and they go ahead and take the loss on the books early, knowing that you'll never catch up, and it's basically an internal restructure. So in my end brief, I'm told you have 5 programs in reach forward loss. I got with the guys and said, hey, look, we've got to apply the same rigor here we did other places. I did bring some of my trusted agents with me. And so we go down to San Antonio and we take a look around. It's 2004. And we're so far behind schedule and over cost, it's not even funny. And we have a principal subcontractor who is another point of repair. So we looked around and we said, this is a bigger mess than we thought. And so we got everybody together and we said, look, we're going to put in a performance management process and we're going to use earned value management. And what I got was, Mr. Finneran, you don't have a clue. You're one of those production guys. This is services. You don't have a clue. We don't do EVM and MRO. I said, oh, really? Why not? Oh, it's too unpredictable. I said, well, give me an example. Well, when an airplane comes in, we have to do an inspection on the airplane and, figure out what's wrong with that airplane, and then we order the parts to fix it. We put in a robust performance management process to include EVM. Wasn't easy. Anybody ever seen a KC-135 PDM? So it's a, 45-year-old airplane then? They strip it down to parade rest. I mean, all the skins come off, all the wires come out. All that's there is a skeleton of an airplane, 707. Big job, lots of long-hour tasks. Trying to convince people to break that down into 40-hour packages was not real popular. And then when we talked about 8-hour packages, people looked at us like we were insane. But this is where I said some people didn't always like me. I said, that's very interesting. That's what we're going to do. And these people that I brought down here are going to teach you how to do it. And if you don't want to learn, you can go someplace else. It's really that simple. I don't have time to mess around. And so we effectively did that. And I said, first of all, guys, how many of these airplanes have we done? And I don't remember the number, but it was a significant number. I said, has anybody thought about Paretoing out? We got all the records on those past airplanes. Pareto out what we did on those past airplanes. And let's see if we've got some commonality from airplane to airplane. Oh, lo and behold, it was real significant. And I said, oh, so we know with some level of confidence the next airplane that comes in is going to look like those airplanes. We could be off a little bit, but what if we ordered the parts based on that Pareto analysis and we're off 10%? It means we're going to carry a little extra inventory. But we're not going to lose cost and schedule. And we can do something with that inventory like the next airplane. And I said, do we go look at the airplanes before we get them? And they went, well, no. I said, these are mostly guard and reserve airplanes. That's who flies these things. They're easy to work with. Just go say, hey, 30 days prior to your induction, can we come put a 5-person team on there and do a pre-induction inspection? What we can do is validate that our Pareto's about right and find things that may not be in that Pareto analysis for that airplane. And they went, oh. And I said, so when you get back, we'll take the Pareto data, we'll take the inspection data, we'll put together the original, the basic integrated master plan and schedule, the baseline, and we'll order parts. And we'll create the workflow packages, and we'll, look at any changes to the WBS that need to be made. And when the airplane comes in the door, we swarm it and we fix it. Well, we found out that we were about 80% right. So we said, that's not quite enough. So we said, okay, that's good. we'll take the 80%, we'll do a notional schedule, and the minute the airplane hits the door, we swarm it. We invested in some little PDAs that had a good IT system in San Antonio, that when they found a non-conformance on the airplane, they could type it right in. It fed right into the system, and it started updating automatically the WBS, the workflow, and the parts required. And so we went from the 80% level to the 95% level, which was our goal, within the time it took to inspect the airplane, which is a week, roughly. And so with that 95% level of confidence, we were basically able to finalize our EVMS. We were able to tell the customer that next contract we can go firm fixed price. Actually, I like fixed price incentive fee better, but we said firm fixed price. And we successfully did that. We took flow days from an average of 320 days that airplane was out of service in our facility, and we dropped it to 120 days average. We took on-time quality from some number, I can't remember, but it used to upset me greatly, to 98% first time at the repair station. And we dropped the cost by 40%. The power of a performance management process fueled by EVM. Now, as I sent my notes out to my former team, who all think I'm a bit nuts for still doing this kind of stuff. But they were all kind enough to respond. And a guy named Jim O'Neill, who Mark knows well, one of the finest executives Boeing ever had, sent me back a note because of some of his experiences where he had programs that hadn't done that upfront stuff. And in bold letters, he said, EVM will not fix a bad contract. It'll just tell you how bad that contract is. So EVM is not a panacea. It's not going to solve, things that can't be solved. But if you know that, you fight harder for that upfront part where that contract matches that vision. The other thing he reminded me is that watch your critical path, because you can have items that aren't on the critical path that we may have people available or parts available, and they'll start doing those non-critical path tasks without any pressure, and they'll do them ahead of schedule, obviously, and they'll do them under cost, and it will make your overall earned value management report look better than it is. So we had to go through, and in those days, manually make sure that those non-critical path parts weren't distorting what our real position was with the program. So it goes back to my questions earlier about resistance. Why do we have resistance? That's not a rhetorical question. That's a question. And by the way, I have this horrible habit that if you don't volunteer, I'll pick somebody. I'm told that's really poor sportsmanship, but it's fun. Why do you think we still have resistance? Thank you, sir. Pardon me? Because it tells the truth. I agree with you. That's one of them. Any other reasons why we have resistance? Yes, sir. Yes. Good point. If you don't help them understand how it's going to help them. And keep, yes, ma'am. I hadn't thought about that one, but you're right. But we never let red be a bad thing. All red was something that required attention. Back in the back. You got a shout from back there, my friend. People don't like change. I agree with that too. Let me toss a couple other ones at you. They don't understand. This goes closer to the comments here, the gentleman in the gray coat. If they don't understand it, they don't like it. They're more afraid of it. So you really have to, when the MRO situation in San Antonio, I mean, I was really mild about the kind of pushback we got. I got emails from people that really said unkind things about my family heritage. So, no, you really have to help people understand, why is this good for them? And why is it good for the company? And if it's good for the company, then why is it good for them? So it is about, afraid of change and this whole idea. So a lack of understanding. I'm surprised I didn't get this, especially from the GAO person. The upfront cost, the upfront time and money to put a proper EVM system on a program. Now, based on some of the stuff I saw upstairs, that's getting easier and getting better thanks to you. But 9 years ago, it was hard. It did take time to take all that workflow and break it down into 40-hour or 8-hour work packages. Took time. And everybody wants to go. Contracts approved, they want to go, including your boss wants to go. I'm going, let's slow down to go faster. Because if we put the EVM system in, we're going to make money. We always did, by the way. So can we replicate those 4 programs? They were all very successful. By the way, that KC-135 MRO reach forward loss, the finance guys had to eat crow, put that thing back in, and we ended up with about 5% operating margins on it, on the contract, from a reach forward loss. Out of the 5 reach forward loss programs, using that process, we got 4 of them profitable. The 5th one was impossible. It was a deal that the Boeing corporate cut with the government of Saudi Arabia to do the King's airplane at half the cost. The best we could do was get it back to half the cost. And I suggested to Jim Albaugh, who was our boss, that he talk to corporate about adjusting his operating plan for the bag of worms that they gave us. Yeah, we can do it, but it takes what we did. It takes a shared plan. I wonder, I don't know anything about F-35. I really don't. All I know is it's way over cost, way behind schedule, and they've still got technical problems, okay? And our country needs all that to get fixed. I have my suspicions, but I don't know anything. I just wonder if they'd have had that shared vision with a contract that supported that shared vision, and maybe not tried to be so bold and do it all at one time, but to basically incrementally add some of that fantastic capability they've got. I just wonder if we'd have saved billions. I just wonder. Now, am I blaming Lockheed? No. Am I blaming the government? No. I'm blaming the system. The other thing is we need to make the product the boss. I learned this from one of our manufacturing guys. He says, the airplane's the boss. If we do the right thing for the airplane, we're going to be doing the right thing for the customer and the company. That really resonated with me. So if you focus on the product, the requirement, and make that the boss, then it's not about the company trying to make more money or the government trying to, put more pressure on the company than they can handle. It's about focusing on doing the right thing for the product. The program manager has to own the program. I'm watching all these companies go functional again. We've seen that sine wave. Can you do EVM in a functional environment? I don't know. I just think it would be a lot harder. I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you create the work breakdown structure, create the IPTs, flow down the requirements, flow down the resources, put it in an EVM system. I don't know how you do that. So I think the program manager needs to be the owner, and IPTs at every level need to use earned value management. There's nothing new here. Absolutely nothing new. This is all old stuff. But if any of you ever read Peter Drucker and his works on running a business, that's real old stuff, and if people do it, it still works. And it's the people who ignore Drucker's sage advice that go out of business. I think the same thing is true for this. A solid, integrated performance management process fueled by earned value works. And there's a couple of powerful messages that are hidden in plain sight. The first one is situational awareness. EVM provided the situational awareness in the F-18 E&F development test so that when wing drop hit, we knew where we were, and we knew where the resources were, and we knew how to make the changes to get the problem solved without blowing the budget. The other one is customer confidence. Somebody said, yeah, I think it was you, tells the truth, right? I want to tell the truth. I want the customer, because the conversations that Admiral Godwin, or Captain Godwin in those days, and I would have, he'd go, that's red. And I went, yep, sure is. And here's why, and here's what we're going to do about it. When are you going to get fixed? I said, don't know yet. We're trying to figure that out. Give me a break. It's Monday. I just found out this morning, you know. But you got to have that kind of dialogue, open, honest, two-way communication. Performance management is not about the mechanics. Can't do it without you all. Most of you here are on the mechanics side of this business. You provide the software, the hardware that allows us to collect, analyze, display EVM data. And based on what I'm seeing here, there's some pretty impressive stuff that's going on that didn't exist 4 or 5 years ago, which is the last time I did this. I was the CEO of another company after Boeing, and that's the last time I really got into the mechanics of earned value management. So I am really proud of you guys, and I'm really thankful for what you're doing. I've got 2 sons who are Marine Corps officers, both aviators. They use the products that my favorite companies build. I want those products to be there on time. I want them to be on cost. And I want them to be safe. And I think a performance management process, because it's more than just cost and schedule. That performance management process is also quality. So we got an audience full of technical experts, and Wayne kind of stole my thunder a little bit. What we need are leaders at senior levels. Now, I was the president of Boeing Defense Services. I love Monday morning meetings. Every Monday morning, I looked at the top 120. We had 500 or 600 programs in the services business. We started off at about a $2.8 billion business. 4 years later, we finished up at $7 billion because I had the greatest team on earth. But every Monday morning, we went through 120 programs, and we did it by exception. If it was green, boom. If it was red, the program manager wasn't answering the question because my conference room wasn't big enough. The general manager for that particular division had to have the answer. And it had to be a one-sentence answer. It's sometimes longer than that, but crisp answer. What we created, and a lot of credit goes to that gentleman over there, who in about 1992, 1993, went in to see the president of McDonnell Aircraft, John Capiloupo, and explained to him about earned value management. And one part of that explanation really caught Cap's attention, and that was the part where Wayne said, and oh, by the way, if you're not on cost and schedule by 15% complete, you'll never get there. Right after Wayne left, Mr. Capiloupo had a little meeting with me and Mike Sears because I was responsible for production and Mike was responsible for development, and we had all his airplanes. And he said, go learn about this earned value management stuff now. And so that's the beginning of our relationship with Mr. Abba and Mr. Crystal. What we created, and I got to give Mike the lion's share of the credit. We did some fine-tuning later. A robust, repeatable process that yielded positive, predictable results. We didn't want to have Superman as the program manager. We wanted to have a smart person who could implement the process.